to share and to connect with you all is certainly a great privilege of mine. I hope that in our conversation, there's something that y'all can take that's applicable to maybe something that you do. By no means am I lecturing or teaching. I'm sharing. I'm sharing because my journey has been people investing in me, and people helping me grow. So the names that maybe aren't recognizable to a lot of you, Mr. Anderson, you'll probably recognize a couple of these names, but Mickey and Mike and Jim and Jimmy and Mike and then Steve and Marty and Jason and Bob and Roger. Those are the people who've made me being able to be here and have the opportunities that I do possible professionally. And so I always take a step back and think about the people who've helped get me the opportunities that I have, because if I didn't play for a high school basketball coach, if I didn't work in junior college athletics and so on, and each person has their own stamp on my kind of professional career. And then you can see kind of behind me, my wife and my daughter, who, if I'm the head coach, I probably should be demoted to manager, because I think my wife's the head coach, my daughter's the associate head coach, and I'm just carrying the water bottles around. So I'm okay with that. I realize that. But in my journey, I'm an educator. I love athletics. So I realized, unfortunately, too soon in my career that I wasn't going to be able to play collegiately. So in high school, as my high school athletics career was winding down, coaching and people was always something that was really important to me. So I spent a year at Johnson County Community College as a student manager. I spent 3 years at K-State on the staff as a student manager with Jim Woolridge from 2003 to 2006. Then I've been in Liberty ever since. And I came to Liberty because my dream, right, and this is the irony of this, is my dream is college athletics and college coaching. And in 2006, the staff that I was a member of at K-State got let go. And so they went a million different ways. And so in March, April, May, as I'm looking for a job, the market's getting smaller for me. And so a friend of mine who I'm connected with says, hey, in the interim, how about you come to Liberty? And so I've come to Liberty then, and I haven't left. And hopefully President McLeod-Walls and Tom Eisenhower let me stay for a little while longer, because I love it here. But education has always been a huge part of it. I taught behavioral, emotional, special education. I think the individuality of each person is very, very important. I think that at times we lose touch connecting one-on-one when we're in group settings. And so I enjoyed the behavioral, emotional, special education, because those are some people who need a lot of time, need a lot of love. And so to hear those stories and to connect with people and to grow them was something I really enjoyed. And then I opened up Liberty North High School. I worked as an assistant at Liberty High School for Roger Sturts for 4 years. He was a wonderful mentor of mine, and then got the incredible opportunity from Marty Jacobs and Jason Cahill at the time, which turned into Bob Cornell, to open Liberty North and run that basketball program for the first 9 years of its existence. So that was really really neat to right. I mean, I joke that in the first 2 games of my career, I was the all-time winningest and the all-time losingest coach there. So it didn't take long to get both of those. But my journey, I started with the people, because the journey is not possible without the people. And I think that that's something that's really important to me, and I always reflect upon. One thing about our program, and Bob alluded to this kind of in the message that was sent out, is the family first philosophy. And my profession is athletics, but my clients are my players. And so we always, the number one priority in our program is to take care of our players. We use a term all the time. You've heard the term, but we use the term love tough. We don't use the term tough love. The reason why we do it, and it's calculated, is because I think too many times the tough puts up a wall before you can get to the love part. And players, and especially today's players, because it is different in the 15 years I've been in it, but today's players need the love, they need the attention, they need the constant communication. And so when we talk about love tough, we always say it that way because we want them to see and understand and feel our love for them as people. We want them to know that they're valued, that their contributions mean something. We talk all the time about, not everybody can be the star, right? We only have one leading scorer, but you can be the star in your role. And that's important to us. And so we have very, very candid conversations. When I was in high school coaching, one of the things I used a lot at our parent meeting was, I kind of made a light of it and a joke about it, but quite simply, the point was, if you want to think about if your son, if you want to be on the all-state team, or if you want to win state, and the reason I always use that as an example is if your goal for your son and your family is to win state, I can promise you we're going to get along just fine. But if your goal is for your son to be on the all-state team, you need to reflect, because I can promise you this: if we win state, they got a far better chance of getting on the all-state team. But if you're worried about being on the all-state team, then that's going to get in the way of the growth that our team wants to take to potentially win state. And the reason why we say that is because, right, when you have success, you know how the credit disperses across a lot of folks. It changes. It allows other people to be involved and kind of have their hands in the success of your program and things that go on within your business, within your firm, whatever the case may be. But we always focus on our players. They're the lifeblood of our program. I'm the person who's responsible for it. I understand that, but as lots of you, you're responsible for your businesses too. But if you're solely the person who's the centerpiece of it, you're not, your fatigue is going to grow way too much. You're not going to be able to last. And so we spread our credit out. We divide up our duties and responsibilities to give to the players. An example would be when I got the job in April. So a lot of you are familiar with our area, but when I got the job in April, not only did I go from high school to college, but I went from a program who had the same coach for 40 years, Larry Hawley, one of the most successful coaches in the history of college basketball, literally the history of college basketball. And I walk in and I knew right away the most important thing I can do, and I knew this going into it, was how do I connect with and how do I grow our players? Because what they want to know is, how am I going to get them better? How am I going to make them better players? How am I going to allow them to accomplish their goals? I did a lot of listening first. We had a lot of one-on-one meetings. I got to hear the good, the bad. And then an activity that I did is picked out a couple leaders and I said, I want a wish list. I want 10 things that you want in our program. And I really had no restrictions on it. Now, knowing full well, right, that there's some things I'd be able to do, some things I wouldn't. Well, the list comes back to me. Things like the socks that we wear. We don't like the socks. We would like better socks for practice and games. The water cooler, we would like constant water in our locker room so that we could stay hydrated. And then right away, I was able to knock off a couple things right off the list to build some trust, to earn some credibility with them. But then also came the, we need a new shooting machine, a $7,000-8,000 shooting machine. Okay, well, that's the next step to get there. But I was able to earn some trust with some initial things that the players felt value in, and a simple gesture of, right, a different pair of socks that the players got to pick, gave them and allowed them to feel a little bit more ownership, which then hopefully increased our communication. So when we did need to communicate at maybe a higher level or a more intense level, it was there. They knew that we'd be there and we'd listen to them. The reason I share that story is because, right, what's important to them is the most important thing in the world. And so at that moment, that's where your attention needs to be. Not after I taught behavioral emotional special education, I worked as a school administrator for 9 years. And so I always said, right, the saying, do you have a minute? The answer is always yes, because you know that that person needs that minute. And then whatever they come to you with is the biggest, most important thing in their world at that moment. And so to set aside time to get and accomplish what you need to for that individual is how you gain trust and respect from them. Something that I've carried with me into our team. Another thing that was mentioned kind of in it is leading young men in challenging times. And that's, I don't think there's more challenging times. I know there's not in my lifetime than there is right now. And the reason why I think that it's important that was the third part of what I talked about. I've got a couple other things is I can't lead these young men now if I haven't led them prior. I can't stand up for something now that I haven't previously. And the way that we lead, the way that we grow is an everyday, every interaction thing. And our connection with our players, we talk about educating them to understand the difference between understand and agree. And it sounds so simple, but there is a huge difference between understanding and agreeing when you're in a conversation, and especially as a person in positional authority. I am going to get you to understand why you are not playing as many minutes as you want to. I will sit and we will talk for hours upon hours, and I will show you video and we will review whatever we need to so that you can understand. I full well know that we will not ever agree. The problem is too many times we're looking to build towards agreement because then we feel like agreement might change our decision. And so we spend a lot of time with our players talking about that. We say, you can come and ask us anything that you would like. There is no question. There is nothing off the table of what we can talk about. That being said, it's only fair that I get the opportunity to answer it with total truth and total transparency. We talk about that. We say, we, as a staff, we call it the 4 T's, right? Total truth, total transparency. Players are smart. They totally understand and are perceptive. They're real. They understand when you're telling them the truth. They understand when you're not sure of something. And if you come in and try to fill them full of something, you ain't gonna last long. So we talk about total truth and total transparency. The reason why I say that is if I haven't had that level of trust, of communication with them, how can I sit across from an African-American player of mine and then try to get him to empathize with me about, I don't understand what's going on. I need you to educate me about how you're feeling right now. And so those conversations that we've had one-on-one over the phone or on FaceTime the last couple of weeks are possible because they understand that there's a two-way communication process that goes on every single day in our program. We also talk about this. When you're communicating with somebody, if you interrupt them, it means you're not listening. So we quite simply just have a operating procedure that, now it took time, but it was funny because by the time the season went on, you'd get to the point where in a conversation, somebody would interrupt and then they kind of smirk at you because they knew that one of our the ways that we were going to build our program was we listened to each other. And so when we communicate and when we listen to each other, then our level of understanding, our level of empathy grows in a way that wouldn't otherwise when we're just trying to add our opinion to it. It's hard for me as an adult. It's really hard for kids. It's really hard for people who want to be heard, who have an opinion and are strong in their beliefs. We tell them all the time, listen twice as much as you speak. If you listen twice as much as you speak, not only are you going to be more empathetic, but you're going to grow in a way where your relationships are going to be more fruitful because people are going to want to be connected with you. They're going to want to have that opportunity to grow with you. So when we're leading them in challenging times, I think my challenging time, right, not making not minimalizing what's going on now, certainly. But my challenging time, the way that I view it, is every single day is a challenging time for me. Now it's amplified. Okay, it's certainly amplified. But if I am waiting for the crisis to lead, or if I am waiting for an opportunity to lead, it's too late. So we have to be intentional in everything that we do. As a staff, I talk about this all the time. If you're worried about winning, you're never going to win enough. If you're worried about how much money you're going to make, you're never going to make enough. And so I tell the players, if you're worried about how many minutes you're going to play, you're never going to play enough. And if you're worried about how many points you're going to score, then you're never going to score enough points. And that grows and builds in a way where then what happens is the success of the group becomes more important than the success of the individual. But man, that's hard to grow. And especially in a competitive, we had 800 transfers in NCAA basketball this year. So 800 players who started somewhere are going to end up somewhere else. Well, if they aren't getting what they want, then guess what? They'll just go somewhere else. So how do you keep and maintain a culture in a locker room when they know that they could go down the way and get something different? So that's hard. That's difficult to grow and develop, but it's all part of it. A saying that one of the great leaders I worked with, Marty Jacobs, always told me is, he said, when in doubt, go slow. When in doubt, go slow. And then conversely, right, when you know, you got to go. When you know and you're certain about something, you got to move on it. You got to go, you got to work, you got to act your plan. You've got to get your people aligned. But when in doubt, go slow. And that's been something that I've carried with me forever, because now you have to know what you don't know. You have to be sure that when you're in doubt or when you're confused about something, that you could slow down and go at a level that allows you as an individual to still build leadership capacity. If I don't know, or if I'm in doubt and I go out there and spew something out, or I make a decision on something I'm not sure about, I can compromise not only that moment, right, but weeks and potentially years or somebody's career. There's nothing wrong with having the humility to look across the room or look across at the player and say, I don't know. Or, hey, I may have this wrong, but I'll look it up and I'll watch the film and I'll come back with you tomorrow at 10 a.m. when your 9 o'clock class is done, and we'll sit and we'll watch it together. But I could be wrong. That takes humility, that takes some confidence, but it also means that, you're a human and you have errors, and you can be wrong. But I think in leadership, sometimes we feel like we have to have the answers. We feel like we have to know. And a lot of times, right, that's not the case. I think that as we grow and develop our program, I'm sitting here telling you these things. We're engaged with each other. We're agreeing. You guys are giving me some nonverbal feedback that tells me you agree with some of these things. Well, that's great, because I'm telling you this about how I would like to run my program. That being said, right, the best way that I can recruit, that I can have testimonials about my program, is my players. They're the ones that act it out, just the same way as business leaders, right? The people who you work with are your best testimonials. It's why they exist. That's really hard, though, when everybody's so competitive and we're pushing so hard with it. Our field, my profession, is so competitive, is so intense. I joke all the time that my profession is a lot of other people's entertainment value, but it's my profession. And so for 2 hours, it's somebody's entertainment, hard-earned, passionate entertainment. For me, it's an 80-hour work week of 2 hours that they get to see. But that doesn't change anything. That means people care and they're passionate about it. But at the end of the day, as I said, if I'm worried about winning and losing, if I'm worried about the money I make or the career advancement I have, then those 80 hours and that time is probably not very well spent. But my investment in my players to allow them to grow and to allow them to flourish and feel value is really, really important. Giving them the ownership that I feel like can allow them to grow into, if they want to be coaches, great. but also, successful business people, husbands, fathers is really important, and it can't just be lip service. We talk in our program about family, and I think it's got a huge misnomer, and it's carried on. You hear culture, right, is the huge buzzword in work and sports. What's your culture like? We say family not because we sit around a dinner table all the time and everybody smiles and is happy. We're a family because we're different and we're unique, but we're willing to fight for each other. We're willing to have each other's backs. We're willing to have difficult conversations. We're able to carry things through conflict in trying times, because the bond of a family is different than a bond of a friend. And so as we grow as a family, we understand that it's not so that we're all the same and agree and believe in the same things. It's so that we can look across the table, disagree, and get up and hug each other still. It's that we can enjoy the successes of others. And so the family concept, right, isn't so we put our arms around each other and hug each other all the time. It's that we can hug each other in good or bad. It's that we can be there for each other. We use that a lot. I hope that it's felt within our program. Being a year, I think it's going to still take some time. But I'm proud of what we've accomplished in a short time up to this point. I don't want to take and lecture and give all your time. I feel like I've done a lot of that already. But I just want you to know that my role as the head coach is just simply another profession in a big picture of a community and city and state. I'm going to put in the chat, I'll put my cell phone number, I'll put my email address, so that if you all would ever like to reach out, to connect, I would love to connect with you, have a coffee as things settle, and learn about what you do and things. But then also for me, if I can help you in your business, if our players can help you, we'd certainly love to be involved as part of growing our program and kind of getting out there and understanding things different than what happens on the 94 by 50 hardwood on Thursdays and Saturdays in our league. So I certainly appreciate, Bob. I thank you for the invite and for the time, and then for you all. I'd love to, if there's questions or anything that we can discuss as a group, I'd certainly love to be here, be involved in that.
I'm going to tell the group I'm a little bit at a disadvantage because my internet went out, so I'm working on the iPhone, so I can't see when people have questions. But I will promise you this, Coach, there will be questions, and maybe I'll throw the first one out. You've been around long enough to see the growth and explosion of social media. How has that impacted your job?
Well, so it's significant, right? I tell people all the time, it used to be where everybody could have an opinion, but you didn't hear everybody's opinion. Now everybody's got an opinion and you hear everybody's opinion. And so it's very different. I think that, right, when we talk to our guys and we're transparent with them about it, right, some programs restrict it. Some programs say you can't be involved in posting things or do things. I think that's very short-sighted. So we spend a lot of time educating our guys about what these mean, what the post means, what your stance on something means. Because what's going on now, right, is you read things of potential employers finding information that has been posted on social media previously that then impacts job and interview process as they search a digital profile, as they do those things. But at the same time, Bob, and I think this is, and especially in today's, what's gone on the last 3 months, is we want them to have an opinion, though. We want them to stand for something. We want them to have a voice that maybe they previously didn't, or otherwise might not have the same audience if they weren't a student athlete. But educating them to understand it, the monitoring of it, the interaction of it is immense. It's constant. I think that being in touch with it is really, really important. So dismissing it, right, is just simply not an option. But it can be used in a very valuable way. The way that we use it as a program to connect with folks is important. But if my priority is always my players, then I have to make sure that they understand the good and the bad as to what they're involved with it. And then, Rich, I saw your question, so it's nice to have a Jewell connection here. So I think one of the things that is different, and maybe it goes a little bit to Bob's question, is just modernizing the program in a way that connects with maybe a group that previously, with the alumni base, with the success of the program, with the NAIA roots, maybe hasn't been connected with as much. And so the way in which we modernize the program is things like our presence on the web, our presence in social media, our email interactions, the way that I'm getting out and trying to connect with various alumni groups through our advancement office to introduce myself. But then that is the difference. A lot of the things are similar, right? Because I think the thing that you always hear about Coach, and I've got to know Coach previously for this, previously before I took over, and then he's been a very, very loyal supporter since, is right, his players love him. Players revere him. The connection that he has with people is still very strong. And so making sure that, you know, Coach is an ally because we have belief in the vision of where we're going is really important. So, you know, there's some modernizing of the program that's going to go on, but that's just a natural progression of somebody else taking over. There's not going to be a lot that's radically different because there's so many good things and good people that are associated with the program that I don't want to change that.
Good to hear.
What have been some of the unique challenges in recruiting? I mean, if I recall correctly, the season ended pretty much right about, or the COVID-19 shutdown was invoked pretty much right about the end of the season, Chris. And this is a very important time for, you know, staffing your roster or teaming your roster next, you know, next season. Give us some unique tales of what's transpired during this recruiting.
Well, we need to have another chat about that just for some stories, because it's been the craziest thing you've ever experienced. As far as, right, the pandemic and the way things change, that in of itself has been crazy enough. And then you throw in the fact that lifeblood is the players in recruiting. That's the lifeblood of a program. And the spring for NCAA Division II is the most important recruiting period you have, because you're getting out, you're trying to seal the deals on some guys. So see, Rebecca mentioned March 12th. March 11th, we had a recruit on visit. And then March 13th, I was scheduled to fly out to go watch a prospect play, visit with him. The following week, we were going to have 2 prospects on campus. Immediately, right, we had to pivot and change how things were going to operate for us. The prospect, right, that I was supposed to see, luckily we ended up signing. He's got an incredible story. He's been playing basketball about 3 years. He's originally from Ghana, came to Los Angeles, and it was just amazing to see the way that this recruiting process played out for us in Malator. I'll tie it back to something though real quick, Bob, is if I was just recruiting and just building relationships right when my season was over, I'd be in trouble. But with Malator, we've had a relationship, and we've been actively recruiting him via phone and FaceTime and text for a while. And so we were able to have that relationship so that we had an understanding of when things changed. We still were in good shape with him. The one thing, Bob, that's significant is the amount of people that have to be mobilized to make this possible, though, moving forward, because when we would host a recruit, admissions is involved, financial aid is involved, all these other people are involved. Well, now we can't even bring people on campus. We can starting next week. That's a whole nother story, but we couldn't for a long period of time. And so the ability to coordinate with all these other folks and communicate with them, to have a virtual visit or an online visit, was very, very hard initially because it's something so different than what we've done. Now, when we reflect back on it, we see that not only did that allow us to keep moving forward, but it's something we're going to keep in the future because we had some prospects who otherwise might not have been able to come from, say, Texas, who, well, if I can do a virtual tour, then I'll do that and still feel connected, was really important. So something that was once negative, I think in the long run might end up being a positive for us. But, the summer period's been canceled, so being able to get out on the road and see 2021 prospects is difficult for us. That's something that we're concerned about. Now, that being said, right, everybody's in the same boat. So being creative with that. But, relationships is a huge, huge part of it. Huge part of it.
Yeah, that's just a good reminder why we do what we do here every Wednesday morning, because you never know when you're gonna need to have a phone number that you can call.
Absolutely right.
Who else has a question for Coach?
Hey, Coach. I have a statement and a question. I would say since I've been officiating, by the way, I went to one of your games this year and your players were fabulous. And as an official, I used to want to be a college coach. And now that I see all the commitment and the work and all the criticism that you guys get, I'm pretty happy being an official. I think we take less than you guys do, actually. But no, you do a great job. And it's you can tell a good program in 5 minutes of the game, how your players react if you interfere. But my question is, what were some of your coaching influences, or who's an influence to you now?
Well, thank you for the comment. We work hard at that because I feel like that's right, a part that is maybe dismissed too much is the relationship between coach and official. So we spend time on that. Now I spend too much time on it, because I have a file of officials, and every official I've ever had, I've got notes about tendencies and things. So,
well, we when people ask me what's the why do you like doing college officiating, I say, well, because when the coaches yell at us, they call us by our first name first.
Well said. Yeah. So as far as my influences go, I think the two biggest influences were my parents, my dad. And so my parents are, I grew up in Overland Park. They come to almost every game. They're so loyal and loving and supportive of myself, my brother, my wife, their granddaughter. But, neither one of my parents graduated college. And so I feel like part of what I'm doing is an extension of what maybe they couldn't in their careers and lives for a variety of reasons. But my dad was my little league coach. So that was my experience with coaching early on. And so that was something that's just always stuck with me. But then, my high school coach, I think that the experiences that I had, Jamie, right, I take the good, the bad with each experience that I've had, and have just kind of thrown it in a blender and then spit out what I feel like is one way to do it. I think that one thing that is totally overrated in coaching is emulating a style or emulating a person that maybe you don't have close ties or experience with. I quickly learned that the person who I am is me as the coach, because guess what? At the end of the day, like you said, I'm the one that's responsible for it. I can't say, well, I thought that I saw Tom Izzo do this, or I thought I saw Brad Stevens do this. So doesn't that work? But the other thing is, I just think that in so many conversations that you have with people, you just pick up on things. And you grow. So I'd be remiss if I said, these three people, because it's been so many people. But I always think back to my parents as being people who I feel like I'm kind of servicing them and serving their dreams or hopes or things in this role.
Other questions for Coach?
2 questions, if I could, real quick. First of all, thank you for being here. To piggyback off of Jamie, what are you with your influences, but what are you reading right now to help grow that? And the other thing, and the reason I really appreciate having you here, is I can tell from how you speak and what your focuses are that leadership is a big thing that you also work on. And the differences in leadership between coaching a basketball team and running a business are really similar. There are a lot of common threads. How can we help our people in our charge as leaders to focus on the skills instead of the score? I did hear you say that earlier, that you're not worried about the score or the getting on one particular team. So how can you help reorient also the people above you to not focus on the score, but the skills?
Okay, so Ryan, I so appreciate the question. That is why I think there's so many leadership books written. That's why people study it so much. That's why there's groups like this, because I don't have a specific answer to that. I thought that, right, you would, the more experience that you have or the more people you talk to, and then you realize, if anything, it's the opposite. There's just more gray and confusion of it. What I've found, though, and why I believe it is this. You have a plan. And if people see and can clearly buy into a plan that you have, a vision or a way to go about something, I think it gives them a great sense of peace to know that putting our best foot forward and following this allows us the best chance for success. I think that on being unorganized, I think reactionary, power struggles, I think that those things get in the way of people being able to have peace with losing. Now, that isn't to be confused with, I'd like to think I'm one of the most freaking competitive people you've ever met in your life, and I despise losing. But at the same time, I also know that I just got to go across and shake hands sometimes because it didn't work out. One thing that we spend time on too, as far as process or not worrying about results, is did you lose or did the other team win? There is way too much that you can do that people don't about beating yourself. Right. So we have a chart of eliminating mistakes. Things like a missed free throw box out. If you miss a free throw box out during a game for us, you're running the next day at practice. That free throw box out could potentially lead to points from the other team, right? Late game situations come into play in that. Technical fouls, intentional fouls. Those are eliminating mistakes. If you eliminate those are points and possessions that you give the other team. Fouling 3-point shooters, right? I can go on and on about our list. But you eliminate the things that are in your way of winning. So that would be kind of where I have peace with it. I'll tie something else in to that, Ryan. You asked about reading. Read The Score Takes Care of Itself by Bill Walsh, great San Francisco 49ers coach, executive of a long time. He has a book called The Score Takes Care of Itself that I read. And he, right, is one of the guys that spearheaded that, 20, 30 years ago. And now, it's kind of stuck a little bit, and you hear Nick Saban talk about it a lot. Book that I just picked up, The Obstacle is the Way. Ryan Holiday. So that's something that I've just got picked up. And then just for entertainment's sake, a lot of people have recommended The Boys in the Boat. It's a story about the 1936 Olympics and some obstacles that some folks were trying to get. So that's a little bit for entertainment. I'd say the best books I'm reading are the audio books, though, because my ability to sit still and read a book doesn't exist. So I don't know. I think that's a whole nother conversation though to have, Ryan, because I think that's such an important way to have success and to get people to buy into it. Because even your best sometimes might not, because how many did I score and did we win?
Go ahead, Gary.
First of all, thanks so much. Yeah, this has been really refreshing for me, just about leadership overall. And one thing you said at the very beginning, and I feel like I'm really guilty of this at times. I believe in that tough love, but what you said about love tough, I thought that is really a powerful paradigm to me. And I think it changes the way I need to approach some things. Could you just tell me a little more your how you came upon that and developed that mentality, and how you carry that out with your people? Just the brief amount you shared about that, I thought was really pretty powerful.
Yeah. Part of it is just about being real and honest with them, because I think sometimes we're guarded about emotions, we're guarded about feelings. I would say as males too, we're more guilty of it.
Yep.
So the ability to kind of let your guard down is something that took me some time to get to. But then the other thing about it, Gary, is just there's a human connection component of that that just resonates with me and sticks with me, because whatever, people are really good and professional, but we don't know their stories as well as we need to. Now there's a fine line, and I would err probably, and I err, and I've been criticized for, and Brett can unmute himself as long as he doesn't run off into the guardrail and probably say that this is true, but where I've probably erred too much on the other side, where I've given too much grace. And so then you feel like you get burned a little bit. I know this, in my profession, in my sport, people need and people enjoy our sport and need our sport more than our sport needs them. If that makes sense, you know? And so there's a lot of people who need that connection with teammates that they might be skilled players, but more so than anything, they have a relationship with them. So how do I do it? I mean, I think it's a lot of listening. It's a lot of listening. It's a lot of individualization. What are your areas of strength? What are your concerns? The ability to share openly and not be judgmental. I did an activity with a team a couple years ago. Our team was in a slump. Oh man, we were in a bad slump. We had a talented team, and I just didn't feel like I was connecting with them. So I had them, and with today's generation, you're not going to be able to sit and talk, and they're not going to tell you nearly what you want to get out of them. We do a lot of writing. So Rich, you asked this about program, modernizing the program. Our scouting reports aren't on paper. They're digital and they're on their phone. Couple reasons. One, I'm a paranoid idiot, and so I'm worried about another team being able to get our scouting report. But then the second reason is, I promise you this, they aren't going to forget their phone. They're going to forget their scouting report, but they aren't forgetting their phone. So it's on their phone. They could see it. But as far as modernizing and using digital technology, I will have our players bring their phones into our team meetings. And so when we ask questions or need feedback, they respond via phone and text. Now, right, I have a app I'll use, or I'll have a document that I'll share or something. So it's not a text message, but got sidetracked here. My point is, I did an activity with the team, Gary, that was, tell me what you're worried about, and then tell me what you wish a teammate knew. And what you're worried about came back pretty consistent, right? Which is, I'm worried about us not playing well. I'm worried about my minutes. I'm worried, those typical things that I think I could pick. But when I read, tell me something you wish your teammates knew, completely stopped me in my tracks. Things like, I am having a hard time playing because I'm worried about our season ending. I've played with these guys since 5th grade, and I can't, and it's February, and I'm worried that we aren't going to play to our potential late. And I just realized, okay, and Ryan, this kind of ties in right to process, which is at this point, we weren't playing well, not because of skill, not because of talent, not because of buy-in. We weren't playing well because of fear. And so then I was able, one kid responded, I wish my teammates would know how much it hurt that a sophomore took over my starting role. And so the next day, right, I'm able to go to the player, put my arm around him and say, hey, let's stay after practice tonight and talk for a little bit. And then he was able to just open up and share. So that, right, that is, to me, that's that love component of it, but it allows him the opportunity to share. But then during our conversation, it goes back to the understanding and agree part, right? During our conversation, I'm able to tell him, I don't know that I understand. I hope you understand and respect. This is how I came to my decision. I could be wrong, but this is how I came to my decision. But we still need you as a valuable player. If you want to come full circle and some irony here, in our last game of the season, my sophomore fouled out. That player was on the floor late and had the shot that didn't go in to extend our season. So, right, like when you talk about you're always ready, you need to always, so the irony isn't lost on me on that. That's a very, very long answer to a very simple question you asked, but I think it's complicated and difficult.
That's great. Thank you.
If I could just add one thing, this is just observing from the outside, Coach. I think you could just give a couple of concrete examples, but you get your teams together outside of practice and outside of the games too. And the two things that come to mind is engaging your players in coaching camps, particularly for up and coming young kids. And then the other thing that I recall, and I may not have this just down right, but in your previous job, you had players write letters to other players or other teammates on what they appreciated about them and what they brought to the program. And that was really insightful to me because that's a bond that goes beyond just knowing where you need to be on an X's and O's situation. Can you just talk on that real quick in the last couple minutes we have here?
Yeah. No, that's thank you for teeing it up and knowing my program better than I do. So I call it our appreciation activity. And what we do, and we usually do this around Thanksgiving. When you work with players, student athletes, the holidays can be really difficult because they might not be able to get home. And then they're at a time in their lives where grandparents and parents are aging. So it can be a difficult time. So I'm always mindful of that. But we have what we call our appreciation activity. And what I do is I create a document that lists every member of our organization, every player, every coach, every athletic trainer, student manager, athletic director, admin assistant, people who directly impact our program. And so they all have a box on a document. And what you do is you go in and I write what I appreciate about each one of those people. And then what generates out eventually is, right, if you have 24 people in your organization, is you've got 24 appreciations that are generated, at 23 that are generated about you. And I compile that list, and then I hand it out to them, and then I tell them, you do with it what you want. But I've got mine. I could literally pull mine from my career right behind me. It's in a folder that's present. But you have 23 positive appreciations about what people in our organization appreciate about you. So it's affirmation of you, it's encouragement of you, but it's individual. It also ties into the fact that people, our guys are really good about typing and writing versus verbalizing it. So the things that are shared are very powerful, right? I love you. We've played together since third grade. I can't believe it's our senior year. I want to have the best possible season we can have together. Thanks for everything, right? A teenager's not going to say that face to face with the teammate. But those are really powerful. We've done those. I've continued to do them. Will continue to do them. They're wildly. It's a really simple activity that just I can set up on a Google form and create out. And it's something that's very, very powerful. I'll tell you this: there's a little bit of a manipulation to it, though. I do it before we start competing. Right? I do it before the games start because I think that clouds some vision of some people. You got to be smart about the timing of it, and how you do it. But yeah, Bob, we're also involved in the community. We do, one of my passions is Special Olympics. And so we bring in some Special Olympic athletes, and our players work with them on like a day camp. And we do things with them just to give back and to be, build some empathy maybe with some of our players who maybe otherwise would struggle with something like that, and just open some doors for them too.
Great. Well, we're past the hour, so I apologize to everyone, but I could just sit here and chat with Coach, as he knows, just for hours on end. So I can't tell you how much I appreciate you being here today, Chris. For those who didn't catch up, Coach put his contact information in the chat. So if there's a reason to reach out to him, I can attest personally, he's very accessible. Obviously, he showed up today, and he gets no retainer for being here. So, Coach, great to have you. Thanks so much. Good luck next season.
Thank you all. Appreciate it very much.
Everybody else, thanks for being here. We'll see you next Wednesday.
Thank you.
Bob. Thanks for coming, Chris. It's good to see you.
Thank you, Rebecca. Nice to see
And
you.
you as well.
Chris, that was like a 45-minute masterclass on leadership, man. I appreciate it. I always like listening to you.
Yeah, thanks. I'll find a good leader and I'll send them to you. Okay. There's some good
Right.
ones online.
Yeah, networking. That's good.
Be good, buddy. Take care of your family.
See you. You too.
See you.
Hey, Chris, did you ever coach one of the star kids?
All of them.
All of them? Yeah. I was Jane's boyfriend. I lived with their family for quite a while.
Yep.
And I remember you.
Okay, sure. Yeah, no, all of them. Yeah, those are my guys right there. Yeah,
Yeah.
we went through.
All three of them were amazing players.
Yeah, terrific players. I actually talked to I was supposed to golf with Kevin and had something come up, so I wasn't able to. But yeah.
Oh, bummer. Yeah, I think Kevin still holds the 3-point record at Liberty.
Yeah. Well, he was conference player of the year in that league that had a kid who is still playing professionally overseas, Garrett Stuff, who went on to play at Wichita State and have an incredible career. But Kevin was the player of the year in that league, and deserved it too. I mean, he was an unbelievable player. When we had another kid being recruited on that team, and there was a coach who came in to recruit him, a Division I coach, and he was watching Kevin play, and he said he was just this brash, he was interesting, but he looks over and he hits me on the shoulder and goes, "Hey, who's the freaking beer truck driver looking guy that can play? He's good. He looks like he should drive a beer truck."
That's funny. Did you ever tell Kevin he said that?
Yeah, the beer truck. So the beer truck driver. Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, I remember you from those days when you got on here. I said, I recognize him.
Small world.
Yes, it is.
All right. You have a good day. I'm out.
Thank you again for this opportunity.
Thanks, Chris.